This is the price for your cheating.
The circular saw screamed through the cedar plank like a banshee, and I should have known right then that something was wrong. The blade caught a knot and kicked back, sending the 2x4 spinning into my left hand. "Son of a witch," I muttered, grabbing a shop rag and pressing it against the gash. The cut wasn't deep, but it was long enough to need attention. I'd been building custom decks for 15 years, and accidents like this usually happened when my mind was elsewhere. My phone buzzed on the workbench. Mrs. Patterson, the client whose pergola I was supposed to start next week. "Evan, I'm so sorry, but we've decided to go with someone else," her voice crackled through the speaker. "My husband found this company online that can do it for half the price, and they can start tomorrow." I stared at the bloody rag wrapped around my hand. "No problem, Mrs. Patterson. I hope it works out for you." But it wasn't going to work out for her. Those online guys were hacks who'd use pressure-treated pine instead of cedar, skip the proper footings, and disappear when the whole thing collapsed in 2 years. I'd seen it happen a dozen times. Still, arguing wouldn't bring back the job. That evening, Melody bounced through the front door with the kind of energy that meant she had news. She'd been different lately, more animated, more secretive, more concerned with her appearance. Tonight she wore a new dress I hadn't seen before, something expensive-looking in deep blue that hugged her figure. "How was your day?" I asked, noting how she avoided eye contact. "Oh, the usual. Grocery shopping, picked up dry cleaning." She set her purse on the kitchen counter with deliberate care. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something. Tracy's organizing this wellness retreat for the moms group. It's this weekend, just one night, but she thinks it would be really good for my mental health." I looked up from bandaging my hand. "Mental health?" "Don't look at me like that, Evan. You know I've been stressed lately. The whole group thinks we need some time to decompress and connect with ourselves." She turned toward the refrigerator, her back to me. "It's at this place in the mountains. Very peaceful, very therapeutic." "Which mountains?" "Just up toward Asheville. Tracy has all the details." Something in her tone made me pay attention. Melody had never been interested in wellness anything. She thought yoga was pretentious and meditation was for hippies. The only connecting she usually wanted to do was with her Instagram followers. Later that night, she came home from her evening walk. Another new habit, and I caught a scent that didn't belong. Hotel soap. That industrial strength stuff they use in chains with the fake floral undertones that never quite mask the chemical base. "Good walk?" I asked. "Mm-hmm. Just needed some fresh air." She kissed my forehead, a quick peck that felt more like obligation than affection. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to her breathe. She was asleep within minutes, which was unusual. Melody typically spent at least 20 minutes scrolling through social media before bed, the blue light from her phone casting shadows on the wall. My hand throbbed where I'd cut it, a steady pulse that kept time with my thoughts. The hotel soap smell lingered on her hair. The moms group had taken over Melody's life like kudzu in summer. What started as casual coffee dates had evolved into elaborate brunches, weekend shopping trips, and mysterious evening meetings that always seemed to run later than expected. Tracy was the ringleader, a sharp-featured woman with perfectly straight blonde hair and the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. She ran the group like a corporate board meeting, complete with agendas and assigned seating. Her husband was Dr. Jonas Ellison, a dentist who'd moved to Charlotte from somewhere up north and opened a practice in one of those expensive medical complexes near South Park. "Tracy thinks we should all coordinate our family schedules better," Melody announced over breakfast on Tuesday morning. "She's created this shared calendar system where we can plan activities together." I glanced up for my coffee. "What kind of activities?" "Oh, play dates for the kids, family barbecues, maybe some couples nights out." She was using her bright, enthusiastic voice, the one she typically reserved for Noah's teachers or the neighbors. "It'll be good for us to expand our social circle." "I thought you didn't like Tracy." "That was before I got to know her better. She's actually really insightful about relationships and personal growth." Personal growth. Another phrase that had crept into Melody's vocabulary recently, along with authentic self and emotional availability. She'd started reading self-help books, or at least she'd started buying them. I'd seen the Amazon boxes arriving, though the books themselves seemed to disappear into her car without ever making it to our bookshelves. Thursday evening, I decided to surprise her by picking up Thai food from her favorite restaurant. I pulled into our driveway just as she was getting out of her SUV, and I noticed she was fumbling with her phone, typing rapidly while walking toward the house. "Hey, babe!" I called out, holding up the takeout bags. "Thought we could have a nice dinner together." She startled, nearly dropping her phone. "Oh, Evan, I didn't expect you back so early. It's 7:30, same time I always get home." "Right, of course." She slipped her phone into her back pocket. "Thai food sounds great. I'm starved." But at dinner, she barely touched her pad thai, spending most of the meal checking her phone and offering distracted responses to my attempts at conversation. "Noah's science fair project is due next week," I mentioned. "He wants to build a solar-powered car." "Uh-huh, that's nice. I was thinking we could work on it this weekend. Make it a family project." "This weekend?" She looked up sharply. "Oh, but I have that retreat thing with Tracy, remember?" "Right, the wellness retreat." "Exactly." She returned to her phone, thumbs flying across the screen. "You and Noah can handle the car thing. You're better at that stuff anyway." After dinner, while she was in the shower, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text message from someone named Jay. "Can't wait for this weekend. I've been thinking about you all day." I stared at the screen for a long moment, my chest tight. Jay could be anyone: Jenna, Jessica, Joanna. Lots of women had names that started with J. But the message didn't sound like typical mom-friend communication. I went to our laptop and logged into our shared cell phone account. Melody had been sending and receiving an unusual number of texts lately, especially to a number I didn't recognize. The calls were brief but frequent, often during times when she claimed to be running errands or at group meetings. Saturday morning, she left for her retreat with an overnight bag that seemed too large for one night. After she drove away, I walked out to check our mailbox and noticed our neighbor, Mr. Hendricks, working in his garden. "Morning, Evan. How's the deck business?" "Can't complain." "Hey, did you happen to notice what time Melody got home last Tuesday night?" "I was dead asleep, but I thought I heard a car door." He straightened up, wiping dirt from his hands. "Tuesday?" "Yeah, it was pretty late, maybe 1 or 1:30 in the morning. Her headlights woke me up." 1:30. She told me the book club ended at 10. That afternoon, while Noah was at his friend's house, I decided to do something I'd never done in 15 years of marriage. I drove to the address she'd given me for the retreat location. There was no wellness center there, just a small strip mall with a dry cleaner, a nail salon, and a vacant storefront. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, feeling like a fool. Maybe I'd misunderstood the address. Maybe she'd given me the wrong information by accident. But deep down, I knew she hadn't. Sunday morning, Melody returned from her retreat, glowing with what she called renewed energy and clarity. She hugged Noah for a full minute, which was unusual. Their typical interactions were quick kisses and reminders about homework or chores. "How was it?" I asked, studying her face. "Incredible, absolutely transformative." Tracy was right about needing space to reconnect with ourselves. She moved around the kitchen with unusual purpose, making coffee and starting breakfast. "I feel like a completely different person." She did look different. Her skin had a flush to it, and she seemed more aware of her body, the way she moved through space. She was wearing new underwear, too lacy black stuff I'd never seen before. "Oh, what kind of activities did you do?" "Oh, meditation, journaling, group discussions about authentic living. Very deep, very meaningful." She was scrambling eggs with more attention than they required. "The other women were so open and honest about their struggles, it made me realize how much I've been holding inside." "Like what?" She paused, spatula halfway to the pan. "Just feelings. About motherhood, about marriage, about whether I'm living the life I really want." A chill ran down my spine. "Are you not happy with our life?" "It's not about happy or unhappy, Evan. It's about growth and fulfillment and being true to yourself." She turned back to the eggs. "You wouldn't understand. Men process emotions differently." After breakfast, I decided to check our credit card statements online. There was a charge from Friday night to a hotel in Charlotte, not in the mountains near Asheville, the Grand Bohemian downtown. Room service charges for 2 meals, 2 bottles of wine, and late-night champagne. I sat staring at the computer screen, my coffee growing cold. The charges were time-stamped throughout Friday night and Saturday morning. If she'd been at a wellness retreat, why was she ordering room service at a downtown hotel? I called the hotel. "Grand Bohemian, this is Jennifer. How can I help you?" "Hi, I'm trying to verify a stay from this weekend. My wife may have left something in one of your rooms." "Certainly. Can you provide the guest name and dates? Melody Cress, Friday and Saturday night. A pause. I'm sorry, sir, but we don't show any reservation under that name for those dates. Could it have been under a different name? I can't provide information about other guests' reservations. If your wife stayed with us, she would need to call directly. I hung up and stared at the credit card charge again. Someone had used our card at that hotel, but not under Melody's name, which meant she'd been there with someone who'd made the reservation. That evening, Noah was building with Legos in the living room while Melody scrolled through her phone on the couch. I sat down beside her, close enough to see her screen. She was looking at photos from her weekend, but they weren't pictures of meditation sessions or group discussions. They were selfies. Melody in a hotel bathrobe, Melody with champagne, Melody looking relaxed and satisfied in ways I hadn't seen in months. In the background of one photo, I caught a glimpse of a man's arm, dark hair on the wrist, expensive watch. Those are nice pictures, I said. She jumped, quickly closing the photo app. Thanks. Tracy took most of them. Tracy has hairy arms. What? In that one picture, there's someone's arm in the background. Pretty hairy for Tracy. Melody's face flushed red. Oh, that. One of the retreat facilitators was helping with group photos. There were men there too, you know. It wasn't just women. I thought it was a mom's group retreat. It was. But they had male and female facilitators for different perspectives on relationships and personal growth. She was talking too fast, the words tumbling over each other like she'd rehearsed them, but couldn't quite remember the right order. That night after she was asleep, I went through her purse. At the bottom, tucked inside a small zippered compartment, I found a hotel key card. Not from the Grand Bohemian, from the Hampton Inn near Jonas Ellison's dental practice. I sat on our bathroom floor, holding the key card up to the light. The magnetic stripe was worn, like it had been used multiple times. My wife was having an affair. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I did something that 15 years ago would have seemed unthinkable. I hired Daryl, my work partner, to follow her for a week. Daryl had spent 5 years in prison for armed robbery before turning his life around and learning the construction trade. He was quiet, methodical, and completely loyal to the few people he trusted. More importantly, he understood the value of accurate information. You sure about this? He asked when I explained what I needed. We were finishing up a deck installation in Myers Park, and the late afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the perfectly manicured backyard. I need to know what I'm dealing with, I said. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize and we'll never speak of it again. If I'm right, you want pictures? Everything. Times, locations, who she meets, how long she stays. Make it detailed enough that it would hold up in court. Daryl nodded slowly. This is going to cost you. I know. And once you have this information, you can't unknow it. I know that too. He started the surveillance on Tuesday. By Thursday evening, he had enough evidence to end 3 marriages and destroy 2 careers. Melody was meeting Jonas Ellison at the Hampton Inn every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, always in room 237. They'd been doing it for at least 6 weeks, based on Daryl's conversations with the front desk staff. Jonas had been renting the room on a monthly basis, claiming he needed a quiet place to do paperwork away from his practice. But the most damning evidence was visual. Daryl had managed to get photos of them entering the hotel together, photos of Jonas's car parked at our house during times when I was at work, and most devastatingly, photos of them kissing in the parking lot behind his dental office. There's more, Daryl said, handing me a thick envelope. Your wife's been sloppy with her digital security. She's been using the hotel's Wi-Fi to send some pretty explicit messages. I didn't open the envelope immediately. Instead, I sat in my truck in Daryl's driveway, engine running, trying to process what I'd learned. My wife of 12 years, the mother of my son, was ducking another man twice a week in a hotel room that cost $98 a night. The rage came first, hot and immediate. Then came the hurt, deep and spreading like blood and water. But underneath both emotions was something else, a cold, calculating anger that surprised me with its clarity. Melody had made a choice. She'd chosen to lie, to cheat, to risk everything we'd built together for hotel room Zex with a dentist whose idea of sophistication was probably having wine with dinner instead of beer. Now, I had to make a choice too. That evening, Melody announced that Tracy was organizing a summer picnic for all the families in the group. It'll be at Beach Creek Park next Saturday, Very casual, very fun. All the kids can play together while the adults socialize. Sounds nice, I said. What time should we be there? She paused, clearly not expecting me to want to attend. Oh, well, it's really more of a moms and kids thing. I don't think the other husbands are coming. What about Jonas? Isn't he coming with Tracy? Another pause. I don't know, maybe. Tracy handles all the planning. I think I'd like to come anyway. It would be good for Noah to see his parents participating in community activities together. Melody's face tightened. Evan, you hate those kinds of social events. You always complain about having to make small talk with people you don't know. Maybe I'm trying to grow as a person. Isn't that what you're always talking about these days? Personal growth? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to figure out if I knew something or if I was just being difficult. Fine, she said finally. But don't embarrass me by being antisocial. I wouldn't dream of it. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of perfect weather that makes you believe in second chances and fresh starts. Clear blue sky, temperature in the mid-70s, gentle breeze carrying the scent of honeysuckle and fresh-cut grass. It was the kind of day when everything seemed possible. I loaded my truck with a cooler of drinks, folding chairs, and a small portable speaker. I also brought my laptop bag, though I didn't mention that to Melody. Beach Creek Park was already busy when we arrived at 11. Families were scattered across the main picnic area, kids running between the playground equipment while parents set up elaborate spreads of food and drinks. Tracy had claimed the large pavilion near the creek, and she decorated it with enough bunting and balloons to supply a small political rally. Melody! Tracy waved us over with the kind of enthusiasm typically reserved for game show contestants. And Evan, what a lovely surprise. I wasn't sure you'd be joining us. Wouldn't miss it, I said, setting down our cooler. This looks like quite an operation you've got here. Well, I believe if you're going to do something, you should do it right. She gestured toward a table laden with homemade salads, sandwich platters, and an array of desserts that would feed twice as many people as were present. Community building is so important, especially for the children. I scanned the crowd, looking for Jonas. He was standing near the volleyball net, wearing khaki shorts and a polo shirt that probably cost more than I made in a day. He looked like every suburban dad cliché rolled into one person, confident, casual, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. Daddy! Noah tugged on my shirt. Can we go throw the football? In a minute, buddy. Daddy needs to help Mom get set up first. Melody was arranging our contribution to the food table, a store-bought fruit salad and a bag of chips, with more care than the simple task required. She kept glancing toward Jonas, subtle looks that probably seemed innocent to anyone who wasn't specifically watching for them. Ladies and gentlemen, Tracy called out, standing on a picnic bench to address the crowd. If I could have everyone's attention for just a moment. The conversations gradually died down as people turned toward her. She was in her element, commanding attention with the ease of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. I want to thank everyone for coming out today and making this such a wonderful community event. I truly believe that strong friendships and shared experiences are what make life meaningful. There was scattered applause. Jonas was smiling up at his wife with what looked like genuine affection, which somehow made what I was about to do feel more justified rather than less. Before we get too caught up in our various activities, I thought it might be nice to share some photos from our recent group events. I've put together a little slideshow of our adventures together. She gestured toward a small projector she'd set up on one of the picnic tables, connected to her laptop. The first image appeared on a white sheet stretched between two trees, the group at a restaurant last month, everyone raising their glasses in a toast. I quietly moved toward the projector setup, keeping my expression casual and interested. Tracy was narrating the slideshow like a nature documentary, explaining the context of each photo and pointing out particularly meaningful moments of bonding and personal growth. This one is from our wonderful wellness retreat last weekend, she said, as an image of the group meditation session filled the screen. It was truly transformative for all of us. I was close enough now. I pulled my laptop from its bag and quickly disconnected Tracy's computer from the projector, replacing it with mine. She was so focused on her presentation that she didn't notice the switch until it was too late. And this next photo really captures the spirit of... She trailed off as my first image filled the screen. It was a photo of Melody and Jonas kissing in the parking lot behind his dental practice. taken with a telephoto lens that captured every detail in brutal clarity. The crowd went silent. I could hear children playing in the distance, their laughter suddenly seeming to come from another world entirely.
What?
Tracy stared at the screen, her face going pale. I clicked to the next image. Melody and Jonas entering the Hampton Inn together, her hand on his lower back, his arm around her waist. The timestamp in the corner showed it was taken during her supposed book club meeting last Tuesday. "Oh my God," someone whispered. The third image was a screenshot of text messages between Melody and Jonas, graphic descriptions of what they wanted to do to each other, promises of more weekend retreats, complaints about having to pretend to be just friends in public. "Turn it off!" Melody screamed, rushing toward the projector. "Turn it off right now!" But I wasn't finished. The fourth image was a bank statement showing charges to the Hampton Inn, paid for with our joint credit card. The fifth was a photo of Jonas leaving our house while I was at work, his shirt partially unbuttoned, his hair disheveled. Jonas had gone completely rigid, his face the color of concrete. Tracy was making small, wounded sounds, her hands pressed against her mouth like she was trying to keep her soul from escaping. "Evan, stop!" Melody grabbed for my laptop, but I held it out of her reach. "Why?" I asked, my voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent park. "Aren't you proud of your authentic self? Isn't this the real you you've been so eager to discover? You're humiliating yourself!" she shrieked, tears streaming down her face. I looked at her calmly, feeling something cold and final settle in my chest. "You did that for me." Jonas finally found his voice. "This is insane. You can't just... Can't what?" I unplugged my laptop and closed it. "Can't show people what you've been doing? Can't let your wife see what her marriage actually looks like? Can't let my son's friends' parents know what kind of people they've been socializing with?" He took a step toward me, his fists clenched. "You son of a witch." "Jonas, don't," Tracy whispered, but he was already moving. He swung at my face with the kind of wide, clumsy punch you'd expect from someone who hadn't been in a fight since high school. I ducked easily and drove my fist into his solar plexus, putting 15 years of construction work behind it. He folded like a lawn chair, gasping and retching on the grass. The crowd erupted. Women were crying, men were shouting, children were running to their parents asking what was happening. I could hear car doors slamming as some families decided they'd seen enough entertainment for one afternoon. "Noah!" I called out. My son was standing near the playground, his face confused and scared. "Come on, buddy." "We're going home." He ran to me without hesitation, and I picked him up, settling him on my hip the way I had when he was smaller. "Daddy, why is everyone yelling?" "Sometimes grown-ups make bad choices," I said, walking toward our truck. "And then other grown-ups have to clean up the mess." Behind us, I could hear Melody pleading with Tracy, trying to explain, trying to apologize, but Tracy's voice cut through her excuses like a blade. "Get away from me, you rat-faced witch! Get away from my family and don't you ever speak to me again!" I strapped Noah into his car seat and climbed behind the wheel. As we drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Melody standing alone in the middle of the park, her perfect summer dress wrinkled and stained with tears, while people packed up their picnic supplies and avoided eye contact. She looked small and lost, like a child who'd broken something valuable and was just beginning to understand the consequences. Good. Sunday morning, I filed for divorce. I'd already met with a lawyer the previous week, and she'd prepared all the necessary paperwork in advance. Tamara Dre was a shark in a business suit, with silver hair and the kind of predatory smile that made opposing counsel reconsider their career choices. "This is excellent documentation," she said, reviewing Daryl's evidence package. "Detailed, time-stamped, completely admissible. Your wife's attorney won't have much to work with." "What about custody?" "With evidence of adultery and the public nature of the exposure, I can't see any judge granting her primary custody. Especially given that she's been lying to your son about her whereabouts during these encounters." I signed documents for 2 hours. Petition for divorce, motion for temporary custody, request for exclusive use of the marital home, asset preservation orders. Each signature felt like another nail in the coffin of my marriage. By noon, Melody had been served with papers at her sister's house, where she'd spent the night after the disaster at the park. By 1 o'clock, all our joint bank accounts were frozen, and she was locked out of our credit cards. My phone started ringing immediately. "Evan, we need to talk," she said when I finally answered. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying all night. "No, we don't." Talk to my lawyer. This is insane. You can't just freeze everything. I need money for gas, for groceries. You should have thought of that before you spent our money on hotel rooms and room service for your boyfriend. He's not my... It wasn't like that, Evan. It was complicated. I was going through something, and Tracy's group was helping me work through some issues, and Jonas was just... I hung up. She called back immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Daddy, why isn't Mommy coming home? Noah asked at dinner. We were eating pizza from boxes, sitting at our kitchen table, that suddenly seemed too big for just the two of us. Mommy made some mistakes, I said carefully. She needs to figure out how to fix them before she can come back. What kind of mistakes? Adult mistakes. The kind that hurt people's feelings and break trust. He chewed thoughtfully. Like lying. Exactly like lying. Will she say sorry? I don't know, buddy. Sometimes people don't know how to say sorry the right way. That night, around 11 o'clock, I heard a car in our driveway, then footsteps on the front porch. Then the sound of someone trying to use a key in the door. I'd had the locks changed that afternoon. Evan! Melody pounded on the door. Let me in! This is my house too! I called the police and waited. She was still pounding and shouting when the patrol car arrived 15 minutes later. Sir, we got a call about a domestic disturbance, Officer Martinez said when I opened the door. He was young, professional, and clearly trying to assess whether I was the victim or the perpetrator. My wife, I explained, showing him the restraining order Tamara had filed that afternoon. She's not supposed to be here. Melody was sitting on the porch steps, still in her ruined dress from the picnic. Mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint. This is my house, she screamed at the officer. I live here. He can't just lock me out. Ma'am, do you have identification? Martinez asked patiently. She fumbled through her purse and handed him her driver's license. He compared it to the paperwork I'd provided, then spoke into his radio in codes I didn't understand. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to leave the property, he said finally. You can address the housing situation through the courts, but right now you're in violation of a restraining order. This is ridiculous. I'm his wife. We have a son. Ma'am, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. She looked at me through the screen door, her eyes wild and desperate. Evan, please. Can we just talk about this like adults? Like adults? I stepped out onto the porch, keeping my distance. Adults don't duck their friends' husbands in cheap hotel rooms. Adults don't lie to their children about where they're spending their time. Adults don't use their family's money to pay for their affairs. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Get off my property, Melody, and don't come back. Officer Martinez escorted her to her car and waited until she drove away. From my bedroom window, I watched Noah sleeping peacefully in his room, undisturbed by the chaos happening downstairs. At least one of us would get a good night's sleep. Monday morning brought a flood of consequences that rippled through our small suburban community like stones thrown into still water. By the time I arrived at my first job site, 3 different clients had called to cancel their projects. It's not personal, Evan, Mrs. Morrison explained over the phone. It's just that my husband thinks maybe we should wait a while before starting any major home improvements. Translation: they didn't want to hire the guy whose wife had been publicly exposed as an adulteress. Bad luck was contagious in neighborhoods like ours. But for every client who canceled, another one called to express support or offer work. Word travels fast in construction circles, and my reputation for honest dealing had earned me more allies than I realized. Heard you had some trouble at home, said Bill Crawford, a general contractor who'd hired me for several big projects. If you need steady work while you sort things out, I've got a 6-month apartment complex job that could keep you and your crew busy. I accepted the offer immediately. Financial stability would be crucial in the coming months. Meanwhile, Jonas was discovering that his professional life was just as vulnerable to scandal as his personal life. Daryl had done some creative research and found out that Jonas had been using his dental practice's address and business credit card for some of his hotel reservations with Melody. That's insurance fraud and professional misconduct, Tamara explained when I met with her Tuesday morning. The state dental board takes a very dim view of practitioners who use their business resources for personal activities, especially activities involving adultery. What does that mean for him? At minimum, a formal reprimand and mandatory ethics training. At worst, suspension or revocation of his license. By Wednesday, Jonas's practice was under investigation. The dental board had received an anonymous complaint, complete with documentation alleging that Dr. Ellison had been conducting personal relationships with patients' spouses and using practice resources to facilitate these relationships. Tracy filed for divorce on Thursday. The papers were served at his office during regular business hours in front of his staff and several patients. According to Daryl's sources, the man had an impressive network of contacts throughout Charlotte. Jonas broke down crying in his private office and had to cancel appointments for the rest of the week. I felt a moment of something that might have been sympathy, but it passed quickly. I hadn't forced him to make the choices that led to this moment. I'd simply made sure those choices had appropriate consequences. Friday evening, Noah was building with his Legos in the living room when someone knocked on our front door. I looked through the peephole and saw Pastor Vince from Melody's family's church, a tall man with kind eyes and a carefully groomed beard. "Evening, Evan. I hope I'm not intruding. I was wondering if we could talk for a few minutes." I considered pretending not to be home, but Noah had already heard the knock and was asking who was at the door. "Sure, Pastor." "Come in." He settled into our living room with the easy manner of someone accustomed to navigating difficult conversations. Noah continued playing nearby, half listening to our conversation while constructing what appeared to be a spaceship. "I've been talking with Melody," Pastor Vince began. "She's going through a very difficult time right now, as I'm sure you can imagine. I imagine she is. She asked me to speak with you about the possibility of counseling. Couples therapy, perhaps some individual work for both of you. Sometimes when marriages go through crisis, there's still hope for reconciliation if both parties are willing to do the hard work of forgiveness and rebuilding trust." I studied his face, looking for judgment or condescension, but found only genuine concern. "Pastor, with respect, there are some things that counseling can't fix, some betrayals that are too deep, some lies that are too fundamental. I understand your anger, Evan. What Melody did was wrong, and the consequences she's facing are largely of her own making. But the question isn't whether she deserves forgiveness. The question is whether forgiveness might be the path toward healing for your family. What about Noah?" I gestured toward my son, who was now attaching wings to his spaceship. "What about the example we set for him? If I take her back after this, what does that teach him about self-respect, about consequences, about the importance of keeping your word?" Pastor Vince was quiet for a moment, considering. "Those are fair questions," he said finally. "And only you can answer them. I will say this. Children are remarkably resilient, and they're also remarkably perceptive. Noah will learn more from watching how his parents handle this crisis than from the specific outcome you choose." After he left, I sat on the porch with a beer, watching the sun set behind the trees in our backyard. The yard where Noah and I played catch, where Melody had once talked about planting a garden she never got around to starting, where we'd hosted birthday parties and barbecues and all the small domestic rituals that make up a life together. My phone buzzed. A text from Melody. "Please call me. We need to talk about Noah." I deleted the message without responding. Whatever we needed to talk about, we could do it through lawyers. The week that followed brought a steady stream of revelations that painted an increasingly clear picture of just how deep Melody's deception had gone. It wasn't just the affair with Jonas. It was the systematic dismantling of our life together. One lie at a time. On Monday, I received a call from Dale Mullen, a property appraiser I'd never heard of. "Mr. Kress? I'm calling about the evaluation you requested for your property on Elm Street. I wanted to schedule a time to come out and do the assessment." "I didn't request any evaluation." A pause. "Oh, well, your wife called last week. Said you two were considering selling and wanted to know the current market value." After I hung up, I sat in my truck outside Noah's school, pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. Melody hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been planning an exit strategy. The property appraisal, the separate credit cards I'd discovered when reviewing our finances, the way she'd been slowly moving her clothes and personal items to her sister's house over the past month. She'd been preparing to leave me before I found out about Jonas. The public exposure at the picnic had simply forced her hand before she was ready. That afternoon, I drove to Jonas's dental practice. The parking lot was nearly empty, unusual for a Tuesday at 3 in the afternoon. Through the large front windows, I could see the waiting room chairs sitting vacant, magazines scattered on tables like abandoned thoughts. I didn't go inside. I just wanted to see what the consequences of his choices looked like in the cold light of reality. Wednesday brought news that Tracy had thrown Jonas out of their house. According to the neighborhood gossip network, which moved faster than fiber optic internet in our suburban enclave, he'd been spotted loading suitcases into his BMW outside a budget inn on the outskirts of town. Heard Tracy changed all the locks and had his stuff delivered to his office, said Jim Bennett, whose wife played tennis with Tracy. We were standing outside Noah's soccer practice, making the kind of small talk that substitutes for actual conversation between suburban fathers. You also heard she's demanding the house, his practice, and half of everything else he owns. Sounds reasonable, I said, watching Noah chase the ball across the field with the single-minded determination that only 9-year-old boys can muster. You doing okay, Evan? I mean, with everything that's happened? I appreciated that he asked directly instead of dancing around the subject. Taking it one day at a time. If you need anything, help with Noah, someone to talk to, whatever, just let me know. Thanks, Jim, I appreciate that. But the truth was, I didn't need to talk. I needed to act. And I was just getting started. Thursday evening, while Noah was at his friend's house for a sleepover, I did something that would have been unthinkable to me 6 months earlier. I created a comprehensive digital archive of everything I knew about Melody and Jonas's affair, and I sent copies to people who had a right to know what they were dealing with. Jonas's ex-wife from his first marriage received a package detailing his pattern of infidelity and professional misconduct. The state dental board received additional documentation about his misuse of practice resources. Tracy's divorce attorney received a detailed timeline of the affair, complete with financial records showing how Jonas had used his family's money to pay for hotels and gifts. I wasn't being vindictive, I was being thorough. These people were making legal and financial decisions based on incomplete information. I was simply providing context. Friday morning, Jonas called me directly. Evan, we need to talk. No, we don't. This has gone far enough. You've made your point. My practice is under investigation. My wife has filed for divorce. I'm living in a motel room. What more do you want? I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You ducked my wife for months, lied to your wife, lied to my son, and helped Melody spend our family's money on your little romance. Did you think there wouldn't be a reckoning? I never meant for any of this to happen. But you kept doing it anyway. Week after week, lie after lie, choice after choice. You meant for it to happen every single time you made the decision to keep doing it. Melody told me your marriage was over. She said you two hadn't been happy for years, that you were just staying together for Noah. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. And you believed her? The woman who was lying to everyone else in her life was telling you the truth about her marriage? A long silence. What do you want from me, Evan? Nothing. You've already given me everything I needed. I hung up and went back to building Noah a treehouse in our backyard, in the exact spot where Melody had once said a treehouse would be a waste of space and an eyesore. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 weeks later, Noah and I had settled into a routine that felt almost normal. Breakfast together before school, homework at the kitchen table in the afternoon, dinner without the tension that had been building in our house for months without me fully recognizing it. Dad, why doesn't Mom call anymore? He asked one evening while we were working on his solar car project for the science fair. I set down the small screwdriver I'd been using to attach the car's wheels. What do you mean? She used to call every day when she was staying at Aunt Linda's, but she hasn't called in like a week. I hadn't told Noah about the restraining order that prevented Melody from contacting us directly. I'd let him believe she was simply taking time to figure things out, which wasn't entirely untrue. Sometimes when grown-ups make mistakes, they feel too ashamed to face the people they've hurt, I said carefully. It doesn't mean she doesn't love you. It means she doesn't know how to fix what she broke. Is she ever coming back? I don't know, buddy. What I do know is that you and I are going to be fine, no matter what happens. He nodded and went back to connecting the solar panel to the car's motor, accepting my answer with the resilience that had always amazed me about children. They adapted to new realities with a flexibility that adults lost somewhere along the way. That weekend, we went to the hardware store to buy supplies for the treehouse. As we were loading lumber into my truck, I saw Tracy pushing a cart full of moving boxes toward her SUV. She spotted me at the same time and hesitated, clearly debating whether to acknowledge me or pretend she hadn't seen me. Evan, she said finally, walking over with the cautious manner of someone approaching a potentially dangerous animal. "Tracy, how are you holding up?" "Oh, taking it one day at a time." She glanced at Noah, who was carefully arranging the lumber in the truck bed. "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For showing me who I was really married to. It hurt like hell, and I wanted to hate you for humiliating me in front of everyone, but I needed to know. I deserved to know." I studied her face, looking for sarcasm or bitterness, but found only exhaustion and a kind of grim determination. "I'm sorry it happened the way it did. I wish there had been a gentler way to handle it." "There wasn't," she said firmly. "I wouldn't have believed it if someone had just told me. I needed to see it with my own eyes, in front of witnesses, so I couldn't rationalize it away or convince myself it wasn't as bad as it seemed." She paused, watching Noah test the weight of a 2x4. "Jonas tried to call me yesterday. Wanted to explain things, help me understand his perspective. As if adultery is a complex philosophical position instead of a simple betrayal." "What did you tell him?" "I told him to explain it to his lawyer and hung up. We stood there for a moment, two people who'd been collateral damage in someone else's. Selfish choices, watching my son prepare to build something new in the wreckage of our old lives." "The kids at school are talking," Tracy said quietly. "About what happened at the picnic, about the divorce, about their parents having to explain why some marriages end badly." "Noah's handling it better than most. He's a resilient kid. He gets that from his father." After she left, Noah and I drove home in comfortable silence, the lumber sliding slightly in the truck bed as we took the turns through our neighborhood. At a red light, he turned to me with the kind of serious expression that meant he'd been thinking hard about something. "Dad, are you going to marry someone else?" I hadn't thought about it. "Why?" "Tommy's dad got remarried after his parents got divorced, and now Tommy has a stepmom and two stepsisters. He says it's pretty good because he gets more presents at Christmas." I laughed despite myself. Well, that's definitely a practical way to look at it. "What do you think about the idea?" "I think it would be okay if you found someone who likes tree houses and doesn't think the workshop is too messy. Those are good criteria. And someone who doesn't lie. Especially that." We pulled into our driveway, and I noticed that someone had left something by our front door. As we got closer, I could see it was a small gift bag with a note attached. The note was from Melody. "For Noah, I'm sorry I can't give this to him in person. Please tell him I love him and I'm trying to figure out how to be better." Inside the bag was a Lego set, the new space station he'd been wanting, and a card with a handwritten apology that was more honest than anything she'd said to me in months. Noah read the card carefully, then looked up at me with those serious eyes that seemed older than his 9 years. "Can I keep the Legos, but not have to forgive her yet?" "Absolutely. You can forgive people on your own timeline, or not at all." "That's up to you." "Good, because I'm still kind of mad about her lying." "That's perfectly reasonable." We carried the lumber to the backyard and began marking measurements for the treehouse platform. As we worked, I found myself thinking about the difference between forgiveness and consequences, between mercy and enabling, between healing and pretending wounds don't exist. Melody could buy all the Lego sets in the world, but it wouldn't change the fact that she'd chosen to break our family for the temporary excitement of hotel room sex with a man who couldn't even be honest with his own wife. Some mistakes couldn't be fixed with apologies and gifts. Some choices created consequences that lasted longer than the temporary pleasure that motivated them. Noah and I would build something new in the space where our old life used to be. And we'd build it without her. Spring turned to summer while the legal machinery ground through the process of officially ending my marriage. Tamara had been right about the strength of our position. Melody's attorney spent most of his time trying to negotiate damage control rather than mounting any kind of defense. "She wants to request supervised visitation with Noah," Tamara told me during one of our weekly meetings. 2 hours every other weekend with a social worker present. "What's your recommendation?" "Honestly, I think the judge will grant it." She's his mother. And unless there's evidence of abuse or neglect, the court generally believes children benefit from maintaining relationships with both parents. Even parents who model dishonesty and infidelity? Unfortunately, Adultery isn't considered grounds for terminating parental rights. Moral failings and legal unfitness are different categories. I agreed to the supervised visitation, partly because I didn't want to appear unreasonable to the judge, but mostly because I trusted Noah to make his own decisions about his relationship with his mother. He was smart enough to see through performative affection and mature enough to understand that love without trustworthiness was just manipulation with better intentions. Meanwhile, Jonas had become something of a cautionary tale in our suburban community. His dental practice had closed permanently after the state board suspended his license pending a full investigation. Tracy's divorce had been swift and brutal, leaving him with essentially nothing but a modest monthly alimony payment and a used car. "Heard he's working at a chain dental clinic in Gastonia," Daryl mentioned while we were installing a deck for one of our new clients. "Making about a third of what he used to make, and that's before Tracy's lawyers take their cut." "Good," I said, checking the level on a support beam. "Maybe he'll learn something about the value of honest work." "You think he learned his lesson?" I considered the question while driving in the last screw. "I think he learned that consequences are real. Whether that translates to wisdom is up to him." The treehouse was taking shape beautifully. Noah and I worked on it most evenings after school and all day on Saturdays. It was becoming more elaborate than I'd originally planned. A proper platform with railings, a rope ladder, windows cut into the plywood walls, even a small roof to keep out the rain. "This is way cooler than Tommy's treehouse," Noah declared one Saturday afternoon as we were installing the roof shingles. "His doesn't have windows or a real roof." "Well, we had more time to plan ours properly." "Because Mom isn't here to tell us we're doing it wrong?" I paused, surprised by the casual way he'd made the observation. "What do you mean?" "She always had opinions about your projects. Like, when you wanted to build that deck off the kitchen, she kept saying it was too big and too expensive and we didn't really need it. But then when Mr. Peterson built one just like it, she said ours should have been bigger." I thought about that conversation, remembering how Melody's constant second-guessing had gradually worn down my enthusiasm for home improvement projects. I'd started building fewer things, taking on more outside work, spending less time in our own space because it never seemed to meet her shifting standards. "People sometimes criticize things because they're unhappy about something else entirely," I said carefully. "It's not really about the project. It's about feelings they don't know how to express directly. Like how she was probably already thinking about Jonas when she said the treehouse was a dumb idea. My son's perceptiveness never ceased to amaze me. Maybe something like that." That evening, Noah's first supervised visit with Melody was scheduled for Sunday afternoon at a community center downtown. The social worker, a patient woman named Mrs. Rodriguez, had explained that the visits would be monitored but not recorded, designed to give mother and son a chance to maintain their relationship in a neutral environment. "Do I have to go?" Noah asked Saturday night as we were finishing dinner. "Legally, yes, but if you're uncomfortable or if she makes you feel bad in any way, you can tell Mrs. Rodriguez and the visits can be modified." "What if she asks me about you? About why I'm not mad at you for getting divorced?" "You tell her the truth, that you understand I didn't make the choices that broke up our family." He nodded thoughtfully. "She's going to cry, isn't she?" "Probably. And she's going to say she's sorry and that she loves me and that she wants to be a family again?" "Maybe. But she's not actually sorry about Jonas. She's just sorry she got caught." I stared at my 9-year-old son, wondering when he'd become so wise about human nature. "What makes you think that?" "Because if she was really sorry, she would have stopped before you found out. And she would have told you the truth herself instead of making you find out the bad way. That's a very mature way to think about it." Tommy's stepmom says that sorry without changed behavior is just manipulation. Tommy's stepmom sounds like a smart woman. Sunday afternoon, I dropped Noah off at the community center and watched through the window as he walked into the supervised visitation room. Melody was already there, wearing a dress I'd never seen before, her hair styled in a way that suggested she'd spent considerable time preparing for this 2-hour visit. She hugged him immediately, holding on longer than he seemed comfortable with. Even from a distance, I could see her crying. 2 hours later, when I picked him up, Noah was quiet on the drive home. "How did it go?" I asked finally. "Okay, I guess." She brought me a bunch of new toys and kept asking if I missed her and if I wanted her to come home. What did you tell her? That I missed the mom she used to be before she started lying all the time. How did she react to that? She cried more and said she was trying to become that person again. But then she asked me to convince you to give her another chance, which seemed like she was still trying to get me to fix her problems instead of fixing them herself. We drove the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, both of us processing the complexity of loving someone who'd betrayed your trust. That evening, while Noah was building his new Lego set, I stood on our back deck looking at the nearly completed treehouse. It was solid, well-built, designed to last for years. The kind of project that required patience, planning, and commitment to seeing it through even when the work got difficult. The kind of project Melody had never understood the value of. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Jonas. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know that I'm genuinely sorry for the pain I caused you and Noah. I made terrible choices, and I'm living with the consequences. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Forgiveness might come eventually, but it would be on my timeline, not his. By late summer, our new normal had become simply normal. Noah and I had developed rhythms and routines that worked for us. Saturday mornings at the hardware store, Sunday afternoons working on various projects around the house, weeknight dinners where we actually talked to each other instead of staring at phones or making polite conversation around underlying tensions. The supervised visits with Melody had settled into a predictable pattern. She would bring elaborate gifts and spend most of the 2 hours trying to convince Noah that she'd changed, that she was going to therapy, that she wanted to rebuild their relationship. Noah would accept the gifts politely and answer her questions with the kind of measured honesty that suggested he was learning to protect himself emotionally. She asked me if I thought you would ever take her back, he told me after one particularly difficult visit. I told her that was between you and her, but that I thought she should focus on being a better person instead of trying to get people to forget the bad things she did. That was a wise answer. Mrs. Rodriguez said I have good boundaries for someone my age. I'm not sure what that means, but she seemed to think it was good. The treehouse was finished by Labor Day weekend. We'd added a few extra features along the way, a small table for homework or drawing, hooks for hanging lanterns, a pulley system for hauling supplies up from the ground. It was the kind of structure that would have made me proud even if I'd built it for a paying client. Can we have a party up there? Noah asked as we applied the final coat of wood stain to the exterior walls. What kind of party? Just me and you, with pizza and sodas, and we can watch the sunset through the windows. That sounds perfect. That evening, we climbed up into the treehouse with a couple slices of pizza and cans of Coke, sitting cross-legged on the plywood floor and watching the sky turn orange and pink through the windows I'd carefully measured and cut by hand. Dad, do you ever miss being married? The question caught me off guard, not because it was inappropriate, but because it was so direct. I miss being married to someone trustworthy, I said after thinking about it. I miss the idea of partnership, of having someone who shares your goals and values. I don't miss walking on eggshells or wondering if the person I'm living with is lying to me. Do you think you'll get married again? Maybe someday. If I meet someone who values honesty as much as I do. What about kids? Would you want more kids with someone new? I think I'd be open to it, but you know that no matter what happens, you'll always be my first priority, right? Any woman who wanted to be part of our family would have to understand that you and I come as a package deal. He grinned at that. Tommy says his stepmom told his dad the same thing about him and his sister, that they were a package deal. Sounds like Tommy's stepmom has her priorities straight. As the sun disappeared behind the trees, we sat in comfortable silence, listening to the evening sounds of our neighborhood settling into dusk. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear a dog barking, children being called in for baths and bedtime stories, the ordinary domestic symphony of families living their lives. My phone buzzed. Tamara, my attorney. Evan, I have some interesting news. Melody's attorney called this afternoon. She wants to discuss a final settlement. What kind of settlement? She's willing to give up any claim to the house, accept minimal spousal support, and agree to the current custody arrangement in exchange for a quick, uncontested divorce. Why? The sudden change? I suspect she's figured out that fighting this is expensive and futile. She's been paying her attorney with credit cards, according to my sources, and she's running out of available credit. What's the catch? No catch that I can see. She wants to move to Florida, apparently. Start over somewhere new. After I hung up, I sat in the treehouse thinking about endings and beginnings, about the difference between forgiveness and simply moving on, about the strange way that justice sometimes looked less like punishment, and more like people finally facing the natural consequences of their choices. Dad, what's wrong? Noah asked, noticing my thoughtful silence. Nothing's wrong. Just thinking about how sometimes problems solve themselves if you're patient enough. Is this about Mom? Kind of. It looks like our divorce is going to be finalized soon, and she might be moving to Florida. He considered this news with the same seriousness he brought to all major developments in his life. Will I still have to do the visits? Probably not if she moves that far away. Would you miss them? Not really. They always made me feel sad because she kept trying to pretend everything was normal instead of just admitting she messed up really bad. How do you feel about her moving away? Relieved, I guess. Like, maybe now she'll stop trying to fix things that can't be fixed and just focus on being better wherever she goes. That night, after Noah was asleep, I walked around our house, really looked at it for the first time in months. The rooms that had felt cramped and tense when Melody lived here seemed more spacious now, more peaceful. I'd painted Noah's room the color he wanted, reorganized the kitchen to actually be functional, turned Melody's home office into a proper workshop where I could plan projects and order materials. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was a good life, an honest life, a life built on authentic choices instead of performed happiness. The next morning, I called Tamara and told her to accept Melody's settlement offer. It was time to make it official. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday in October, exactly 8 months after that first supervised visit at the community center. I signed the papers in Tamara's office while Noah was at school, making it official with less ceremony than most people put into buying a car. How do you feel? Tamara asked as she notarized the final documents. Free, I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. That afternoon, I picked Noah up from school and took him to get ice cream. Not to celebrate, but simply because it was a beautiful fall day and we both needed something sweet. So it's really over? He asked, methodically working his way through a double-scoop chocolate cone. It's really over. Good. Now maybe she can stop trying to convince everyone that it wasn't her fault. We sat on a bench outside the ice cream shop, watching other families navigate their late afternoon routines. Parents picking up kids from soccer practice, couples walking dogs, teenagers being loud and dramatic about things that wouldn't matter in 6 months.